Now we're going to add the alto voice, or in this case, it's the second violin part. We've done the cello, the bass voice. We've done the viola, what I would call the tenor voice. And now we're going to add the second violin, which I would call the alto voice. Again, we got our chords to consider. Now, whenever it comes around to writing a third voice, it's always sticky to me because it's kind of like you've addressed the primary notes that you really want to cover in the first two voices, and the third voice is kind of like you're left with whatever's left over. So it becomes a real tricky, a very big challenge to write a third voice that is singable, that makes sense, doesn't break too many rules. You still don't want to break a lot of rules. But one thing you have to realize when you add the third voice is that now you're going to have the ability to settle for some more dissonance, because there's just no way you can avoid it. So let's dive into it, and I'll show you why I did what I did. All right, so the first measure, it's a C chord. It's a one chord, right? Well, I have an E, a G, and a C. So I said, okay, my first voice is going to be a G. First note's going to be a G in this top voice here. So now I'm starting off with the full-on chord for that chord, the one chord, the C, E, and a G. Now, the cello part and the viola part, half notes, contrary motion. So I decided I'm going to put motion in this top voice just to differentiate it between. And then I went to this next chord, this 5 chord. There's a G in the bass voice, and the note that dominates the second measure of the second voice is a B. So I decided I'm just going to put the D in here, in this voice. Even though the B doesn't come until beats 3 and 4, I'm going to pretend it's there for my purpose, for all sense and purposes, and I'm just going to put a D in here, and I'm going to put a whole note. Why? Well, the other two voices are moving against each other. I don't want to just be make these voices go hither skitter and flying all over the place. These guys are moving down here. This guy stays the same. So now I've got. Now that's also singable line. Ba-da-da-da-da. Now, next measure. It's a 6 chord. I have a C here and a C here. Well, there's the root. There's a third. Where's the root? There. So the very first note of this measure has the A minor chord spelled out with the root and the third in there. Now, notice how I had this voice here moving. I'm going to kind of do the same kind of feel here, but starting on a C, right? So then I'm going to do something. I'm going to change things up a little bit here. Bass voice is changing on beats 1 and 3. So I'm going to put this rhythm in. I like going to a quarter half note because it has a slight feel of oh gosh, syncopation. That's the word I'm looking for. Syncopation. So A, G, and then the last two beats, it's an A minor chord. We have an E here and an A there. There's my C. So I skipped down from a G down to a C. Now, why did I pick the C? Well, there's not a C showing up anywhere else in the other two voices, and I really want to make sure that the ear hears that. So I put that one here. And again, I skip down from a G down to a C, so I step up to the D. Now, look over here, back here, where I skipped up from the D up to the A. Skipped up, step down. So I'm still keeping my rules going. All right, C, step up, and I'm going to come back to the C. Why the C? Well, I have an F here and an A here. So first beat, I'm going to put a C here. I decided since the bass voice was moving like this, I would key off of the alto voice, or the tenor voice rather, and the tenor voice is going down, so I made this voice go up, C, to an F. All right, now why do I choose an F? Well, because that guy right there is a D. Now, here is where I had to do some tinkering around. Because if you remember correctly, look at my last two measures here. And look what I did here. Why did I do that? Well, part of it was because it made more sense. When I go up to this F here, I really like, let's see, what was it? What was the reasoning I did for this? Oh, I know what it was. This is a D. And I wanted an F there. You know what? I can't remember exactly why I changed that up, except that as I'm writing this line, and I'm going, and I'm hearing this, I decided I liked that part in the upper voice, and so I decided to change it. Also had to do with voice movement, counter motion here, there, and I ended up changing it because it just I couldn't come up with a reasonable solution that I liked in the upper voice with the other two voices voiced the way they were. So I ended up changing it. Again, it's subjective. I could have forced a solution in its top voice, but this is what I ended up with. And here's what it sounds like. I'll let you hear it from here. I like the way that sounded. It just made more sense to me. Now, so when I'm writing, nothing is ever set in stone until I write the last note. And even then, I probably go back and change some stuff. But let's clear it one more time. Cool? All right. Now, let's go and listen to it and add the melody on top of it. All right, you ready? Well, there you have it. I've gone through showing you how I approach writing three voices, accompaniment for a known melody. It's not a science, even though there's rules and things of that nature, but and principles involved. But my brain is split in two pieces here. What are the rules, and what is my heart here? I want each voice to have a part that's interesting enough so that it's not just one note all the way across or some really indescribable and stupid sounding leaps and stuff with no connectivity. I want, if I were a player playing the viola part, I'd like that melody to be a melody, that line to be a melody. A second violin, cello, I want that part to make sense to my ear. And so that's always the challenge for me. So sometimes that leads me to break what might be a rule in certain quarters. Again, I just know that there's some purists out there that would probably roast me on a bed of coals to hear me say what I'm about to say. And that these are the words given to me by a very well-known arranger, composer out in the San Francisco Bay Area back in the late 70s. I took a course on arranging, and he went through all the rules, all the voice leading, how this has to do this, and this has to go here, and this situation demands that you do this, and did all that stuff. Then at the end of the course, he said, one last thing to tell you. You know all those rules I talked to you about? We all went, yeah. He said, I lied. There are no rules. Write what's in your heart. And the class was stunned. And I raised my hand because I'm always the guy with the mouth. And I said, "Excuse me, did I just spend $900 to hear you say that there are no rules and do what we want?" And he laughed. He said, "Yeah, it's a great living, isn't it?" But then after we all got done laughing, he said, "The truth is, you need to know the rules. But you don't write music from rules. Those rules or principles will draw your butt out of the fire if you paint yourself into a corner." But he says, great music comes from the heart. But you know the rules. And they will save you. But if you lock yourself into writing music just from rules, you almost always come up with a sterile, nonsensical piece of music that doesn't light anybody's fire. So he said, use the rules, but don't be afraid to write what your heart says. And if you hear something wrong to your ear, odds are you've violated one of these rules. And there's really not that many of them at this point in the game. So he said, write what's in your heart and sort it out with the rules, or start with the rules and move to what's in your heart, which is kind of what I did here. And he said, thanks for the $900. And he left. So that's my rule. That's my last thought to you. As you compose, knowledge is incredible. You need to know how chords work. You need to know the leading tones, and you need to know a few basic rules about voice leading. Skip up, step down. Skip down, step up. And then as you start to understand the principles of contrary motion and what parallel motion and similar motion situations to avoid, you're going to start writing music that works great. Here was a known melody, and it took me a lot longer to explain what I did than it took me to do what I did. It probably took me half an hour to do what I just did here. And so I just wanted to give you a look inside how I work things out like this. If I were given this melody, this is what I would do. And I would probably still go back and play with this more. But you can see how I can take this piece of music now and I could expand it to a full symphony if I wanted. It's pretty cool. It's a lot of fun. So anyway, that finishes it up. I hope you learned something. I hope I had something to teach you. If you're a composer, welcome to my world. I love it. Mr. G out. Bye-bye.